Well, folks, welcome to this very important roundtable. We are going to have with us Mayor Buddy Dyer as well as Mayor Jose Alvarez. Of course, Mayor Buddy Dyer is the mayor of the city of Orlando, and Jose Alvarez is the mayor of Kissimmee. We're going to be splitting this conversation into two parts. So the first will be with Mayor Buddy Dyer. The second part will be with Mayor Alvarez. And we appreciate folks who've submitted questions. We know in this moment in our history that local government is more important than ever in ensuring racial justice and dismantling white supremacy. And there's been so much incredible work out on the ground holding our electeds to this standard and demanding justice. And so we're excited to continue this conversation in this platform. I think Mayor Alvarez is on, I believe.
Yes, he is up next.
Awesome.
Welcome. Hello, Mayor Alvarez. How are you today?
Mayor, I think you're muted. I think you may need to unmute yourself, but we are excited to have you here. So we are going to be introducing Mayor Alvarez, and this conversation is for folks who are just tuning in. We just had a conversation with Orlando Mayor Buddy Dyer around the state of our community, reflecting on the impact of COVID-19, as well as the Black Lives Matter uprising happening across the world right now, including here in our Central Florida community. So we're here joined with Mayor Jose Alvarez of Kissimmee. Mayor, it's good to have you here with us. And I'll briefly introduce the mayor, and then I'll toss it over to Ashley. Mayor, how are you doing today? Are you well? Can you hear us?
Ashley, I can hear you, but I cannot hear Ida at all.
Oh.
Let's see. Ida, can you speak again? Let's see if he can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can't hear you.
Interesting. Okay, well, Ashley, do you want to go ahead and introduce him, and then maybe our tech can try to fix?
Sure. So let me go ahead and introduce you, Mayor, and then we can get right into the conversation. All right, so Mayor Alvarez has served as mayor of the city of Kissimmee since 2016. The city is a full-service municipality which provides a wide array of urban services throughout its over 740 employees and approximately $160 million annual budget. Prior to being elected mayor, he served a full 4-year term as a city commissioner. Prior to his tenure in elected office, Mayor Alvarez worked with his legislators for more than 10 years to help protect home ownership rights and make home ownership affordable. He previously served on the Fair Housing Board. Over the years, Mayor Alvarez has served numerous causes, boards, and committees throughout Osceola County, including Central Florida Commission on Homeless and Hispanic Business Council. And it is an honor for us to have you here, Mayor, so thank you for joining us this afternoon. And let's, the first question that we have for you is around COVID-19. So Mayor, COVID-19 has demonstrated extreme disparities and has had disproportionate impact on LGBTQ plus people. As mayor, how are you working to reach communities most impacted by COVID, particularly LGBTQ plus and Black and Brown communities, including elders, transgender communities, sex workers, undocumented workers, and families, other historically marginalized communities of color?
So, you know, I've always worked very closely with my entire community since I got elected into city office. And sometimes I've gotten into a little bit of trouble because of that, of what I've done. It's always been a tough vote every time I try to bring something over into the community. COVID-19 has been something that has affected the entire community. So one of the things we did is we wanted to make sure that the first thing that we were able to roll out was rental assistance for our community. As you guys know, Osceola County did not qualify for the CARES Act because of the verbiage in it, which is over 500,000 residents. So we did not qualify. So what we did was the CDBG funds that we received, we requested HUD to allow us to use it for multiple purposes. So normally CDBG will be able to be used for maybe a certain percentage of rental assistance. We asked them to let us use it for rental assistance and also for the small mom and pop businesses that we have here in this beautiful city of Kissimmee. And, you know, right across the street from City Hall, the LGBTQ has their office there. And that is something that I'm very honored to have. And so we make sure that the entire community was involved in it, our African American community that I work very closely with since the beginning when I first got elected as commissioner. And so we wanted to make sure that first we assisted them with the rental assistance. Then the other section of the CDBG, what we did was we created 2 small business loans. One of the loans that we created is for those type of businesses that are like the self-employed or has less than 5 employees. And so it was more or less that individual that was working out of the home with their companies. And so that business qualified up to $5,000. And then we did the second layer of it, which it was for businesses that were from 6 employees to 70. And that one qualified for 10,000. You know, it was a minimum amount of money that we had, so it wasn't much. But now we're looking forward to, because now the county was able to get, after a long fight that we had with the governor, you know, because the governor was sitting with over $1.2 billion from the federal government to release it to those communities that did not receive CARES Act. And it took a lot of letters and phone calls, and I don't think the governor is too thrilled every time he sees my name in front of him, because I've called them out too many times maybe. But finally he released it to the counties. It wasn't really what we wanted. You know, the League of Mayors, the League of Cities and the League of Counties, we worked together to give the governor a roadmap on what would it be to how much money cities and counties will receive. The governor took the easy way out, and he just said, I'll just give it to the counties and let the counties give it to the cities if they want. Good thing that we have a great relationship with Osceola County, and I have a great relationship with the chairwoman. So of course we're going to get our part, and it's going to be used the same, is to help our small business owners and to help the families that are in need in our community, which is included the LGBTQ and the African American community, and a large Hispanic community that we have. As you guys know, Kissimmee's population is over 53% of Hispanics. You know, and for this governor to come out on TV the other day and blame the uptick of COVID-19 to the Hispanic community, but not only that, he went beyond that and he attacked our migrant workers. You know, he said that this was, they were bringing the virus. You know, shame on him, because these are the people that are in the front line working day in and day out. So we're able to have food in our home. So like I said, me and the governor are not in too good of a place with each other. I've called them out too many times, I guess. And my staff sometimes tells me, Mayor, please don't do that too much. But, you know, what's right is right. And I think that he has, he's not a good individual. He doesn't belong in that seat. And that's why I have no problem as a mayor to call him out. I've even invited him to come to my city to see what we're going through. That is not the beautiful color roses that he painted when he does all those press conferences from different corporate offices. The other day with Unite Here, I invited him to my city so I can walk him and show him what my community is going to, what our community is going to.
Thank you for that, Mayor. Mayor, can you hear me?
Ida, you're doing this to me on purpose. I can't hear you. I'm going to call you sister, and I'm going to tell her that.
You still can't hear her?
Me now?
I can't hear her.
Is this any better?
No. Okay. Well, thank you very much for Andres in the background is going to see if we can get that resolved. But thank you very much. You know, everything you mentioned is so important, and the fact that, and you touched on something really important, right? And it's that, you know, what you're doing, even though you're calling out our governor, you know, it's so important because you're in a position to serve the people, right? Not for the people to serve you. So that's so important. So thank you for your advocacy and the work that you're doing around that. Another question that we have for you is around the reopening of the task force reopening forces. So we have, so for example, many cities, right, have and counties have centered business leaders, but not other communities deeply impacted by the crisis for their reopened task forces. What has our city done, like your city, to ensure that LGBTQ people and our most marginalized have a seat at such tables, like in the pandemic recovery phase?
So what we did is I sit in the executive management of the Emergency Management Center. That was my alarm in the back door. So what we did was when we knew that we were getting ready to do the reopening, what I requested in that board, there's 9 of us that sit there. We make decisions when there's a state of emergency. It's all the heads of the different departments. I requested that we have people in that table that are the faces of our community, right? So of course the chamber wanted to put the large businesses. I said, no, we want to make sure that everyone is involved, right? We want to make sure that all the businesses, everyone in our community is involved. So because these are the people that are going to be advising us on how to do best practice, how to get back, and how to make sure that they can survive again. So we make sure, myself and Chairwoman Janer, that the right people were around the table, and it was the people that are the faces of our entire community, not only in Kissimmee, but in Osceola County, and we have that. And they gave some great directions of how to start the reopening. Personally, I believe that we're reopening a little bit way too fast. There's too much of a rush of reopening. It concerns me because the numbers that I'm seeing, especially with the younger population that is coming back now positive. So it's a big concern. I have given my concerns to the governor's office that I'm hoping that he doesn't take us into phase 3. But of course, they have that important convention of theirs coming up pretty soon. And they want to make sure that Florida, it looks nice and clear so they can have that convention in Jacksonville. And I think it's a huge mistake. But what we're doing in the city, like I said, is make sure that everything is done the right way. So one of the decisions that we made in the city to help our businesses when we did the first reopening, it was 25% occupancy. So I asked my staff to relax our ordinance with outside dining. Right. So what we did is we removed the permitting for outside dining. And so businesses were able to add their tables and chairs outside so they can have more businesses to come into their location and not have to be inside, because the mandatory was 25% occupancy inside. So we relaxed the ordinance for that. We removed all the permitting fees to make sure that we can assist those that are in need and really are going through a tough time right now, needing to pull a permit. So I removed all the permitting fees. It's still in place. Those permitting fees are removed. And even now that we're up to 50% occupancy in our restaurants and stores, I'm still allowing them to do business outside. So a lot of our small little stores, and again, I don't know if you've been in our downtown Kissimmee, which is a beautiful place. I'm the mayor. I gotta bring out to what they've done is, so the stores are able to bring out their merchandise outside in the sidewalk. And it's so beautiful because the community comes together, right? So Kissimmee is a community that really works with each other. And people saw it when we had about 3 weeks ago, we had a march that came out with the NAACP. We had over 1,000 people that march in our streets. And you know what? As the mayor, I walk with them with a sign. My police officers were walking them with signs. We had over 1,000 people, and we didn't even have one single issue. And that is a show of unity. And that's what I've always tried to bring to Kissimmee. The motto of my campaign when I ran back in 2012 was Kissimmee. My motto was one Kissimmee for all, right? So the entire community has to work together, and we have to be able to sit in a table and be able to have open discussions to find out what is the issues that are affecting each one of our part of our community, so we could fix it as a whole community.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me yet?
I can hear you now. I was going to get on the phone and call your sister and say, your sister doesn't want to talk to me.
Well, she's in the room next door, so I could. But appreciate our tech team for working us through this. So thank you, and thank you for that response, Mayor. And Ashley for taking charge, of course. You could do this without me, absolutely. I do want to note, Mayor, appreciate speaking to the impact of farm workers in our community, and yes, how the governor has continue to attempt to villainize our frontline essential workers. And he was in Orlando today at around 12 o'clock. So I'm assuming he did not swing by your office based on this conversation. But we do appreciate you speaking for our farm worker communities. It's so critical. Ashley, I think you do have the next question, right? Are we, I think, on COVID and housing, but now we can't hear you, Ashley, and you might be on mute though.
Oops, yeah, I am. I was muted, but now you can all hear me, right?
We can all hear. We're all here. This is great. Well, we do have
Mayor, you're mute. Mayor's speaking, but you're muted, Mayor Alvarez. There we go. Now we can hear you.
And if I may, Ida, and to me, the migrant working community is very important, not only because of the great work that they do, but, as you know, I'm also an immigrant, right? So I'm a Cuban immigrant. I was born and raised in a farm, grew up as a farmer all my life. And that's what my dad still does at the age of 88. He still farms day and night. And so to me, this profession is so important because it was actually my education. I learned everything working in the farm with my dad all my life as a young man. Growing up, I learned how to be a welder, mechanic, and all this helped me in the future. And so migrant workers are so important. But, I'm going to add something else. The worry that some of these people have against our migrant workers when they say they're stealing our jobs, really what it is, it's a front. So they're not saying that they're stealing their jobs as migrant workers. What their concern is because our children are becoming professionals and they're afraid of our children, right? So we might work in that field, 8-10 hours a day, but we are reinvesting in education in our kids, and our kids are becoming professionals. And tell you what, that's what they're afraid of. They're afraid of our kids becoming judges and doctors and lawyers and heck, a mayor. And so that's the worry that they have when they say that, and they make such a low attack, on migrant workers. And it's because the fear in the back of their head is what their children, who they're becoming, right? So we came to this country because he gave us this beautiful freedom, right? And they take it for granted, and we don't. As immigrants, we don't. We take advantage of it, and we make sure that our kids become professionals.
Oh, I deeply appreciate that, Mayor. In this moment in history, of course, we know that immigrant communities are very much used as a political pawn, but are critical to our communities. And paperwork does not make you American. So we deeply appreciate that. And it's nice to be here with both of you officially. You sort of touched on the question around just the housing crisis. We know that you know more than anybody, then, particularly in Kissimmee, the impact on COVID on unemployment and the tourism industry is catastrophic. And that folks who are already living paycheck to paycheck are very much suffering right now. And I think you spoke briefly to some of the rental assistance programs and finally getting CARES Act money and things like that. Would love, before we pivot to sort of our next subject, while we're still on COVID, would love for you to speak more about efforts locally to help folks stay in their homes, whether it's through evictions, rental assistance, and then ways folks can learn more about those processes.
So what we done, we went into the COVID-19 and they did the executive order of no evictions. You knew that some of the landlords were trying to evict and harass some of their tenants inside the city of Kissimmee itself. Anytime that I received a message from one of my constituents that their landlords were harassing them for the rent or telling them that they were going to get them kicked out, I got my city attorney to actually write letters to these landlords on a cease and desist. And we did not allow them to continue to harass them. I know that the county was doing the same thing. We actually found out of a property. It's outside of the city limits, but somehow people think because their address says Kissimmee that my arm reaches that far. But since I have such great communication with the staff in the county and majority of the county commission, I brought it up to their attention. What this landlord was doing was they were putting stickers in their tenants' vehicles, telling them if they didn't pay the rent, the car was going to be towed. And so I contacted the sheriff. I contacted the county attorney. Sheriff department actually sent deputies out there and we put a cease and desist on that. And so we've been working diligently to make sure that no one gets affected. The concern, as you guys know, July 1st, this executive order is going to go away. The last time when he renewed it, and that was something that I brought him to shame in front of the cameras of TV. And I told him, you played politics till the last moment to extend it, right? We were hoping he would extend it at least till the end of the year, because what I'm trying to make reason with him is that even if we do have some employees that are going back to work, so I'll give you an example. I work very close with Unite Here 737, which are the Disney workers that I work with them to get them to 15. As the mayor, that was a few more gray hairs that I received. So with Unite Here, you have 19,000 members. Only 2,000 have been called back. But what we've been telling the governor and the legislature is that even if they go back to work right now, it's going to take them several months to get back on their feet, right? So extend this to the end of the year, so these people have an opportunity to start raising some of the money, because some of them haven't seen a paycheck since March when they got laid off. And so give them an opportunity. So he waited to the last moment. He gave it to us to July 1st. We're asking him the same thing now. Please extend it, but extend it not month to month. Don't make us suffer like this. Just all it takes is a strike of his pen, right, to do an executive order to the end of the year. And then also we've been requesting, and has been falling on deaf ear, is where is the Speaker of the House and the Senate President through all this, right? Since COVID-19 started, we asked the Speaker and the Senate President to bring them back to Tallahassee so they can do the work, right? The Democratic caucus, the Senate Democratic caucus, all of them asked to get back in session. They refuse. They're not answering, and this governor is not answering at all. And so the concern now is July 1st is just next week. What's going to happen to thousands and thousands of people that are going to be out in the street? It's bad enough that we see them out here on the 192 corridor, right? They live in those motels because they cannot afford to live in anywhere else. So they clean motels for a living, and they live in a motel room, right? So what's going to happen? And that was the other day when I was in front of the media with 737, and I told the governor to please come down to Kissimmee to see what we're going through and to see what's going to happen if he decides to remove that executive order by July 1st. And this is coming from a realtor. I've been in the real estate industry for over 20 years, fighting not only property rights, but also fighting the Sadowski Trust Fund, which has been, that's the piggy bank for them to raid. That's the money that's supposed to go for affordable housing, that they keep raiding it. In 10 years, they've raided over $2 billion out of that trust fund that could have gone to affordable housing. So, but it's falling on deaf ears with this governor. I'm hoping he does the right thing and extends it. But I hope it's not a one more month extension. I hope it's for the rest of the year, to give these families an opportunity to get back on their feet.
Thank you, Mayor. And we have one great question from our audience, which is the following. Mayor Alvarez, with the reallocation of HUD dollars to support rental mortgage assistance, how is the city of Kissimmee enforcing anti-discrimination policies to protect LGBTQ plus people in the region?
We don't allow anyone to be treated differently. So this funding actually goes to anyone that qualifies for it. So we really don't allow anyone to be discriminated against. This mayor will never allow anything like that to happen in this city.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. We again appreciate this call to action, absolutely, to extend the eviction and foreclosure moratorium. Within the Contigo Fund and some of our partners, for folks who are watching, we launched a mutual aid fund to directly support folks who are most impacted in the LGBTQ community by the COVID-19 crisis and by these historic disparities. And so for folks who are able to give, we're still collecting donations. We've had countless folks apply from all of Central Florida, and many folks, Mayor, in the same in the same communities that you spoke to, of folks, living, cleaning our motels and also residing in them, and also, facing really deep disparities and fears. And so for folks who are able to give, we highly encourage and support that. And thank you for all your insight, Mayor. We're going to pivot, even though there are so many intersections between COVID-19 and Black Lives Matter, because we know the disparities, particularly among Black and Brown people in COVID impact is very real, and it's linked to, structural racism in this country. But you spoke briefly already about a march you attended and the unity that was seen there. And so, we want to pivot to talk about this moment in history and how our local governments are responding. And so, as you noted, there's this global uprising right now. It's rooted in the murder of George Floyd at the hands of law enforcement, and also the countless Black lives who we know have been lost at the hands of law enforcement, and the excessive force that is used, and just the historic, brutality among particularly communities of color in their and engagement with law enforcement. In this moment in history, this is a movement led by Black folk for Black folk. And for those of us not in that community, it commands all of us to take their lead and to also dismantle the white supremacy within our institutions, including in policing, as well as so many other structural remnants of what is very much still with us, racism and white supremacy. And then with that being said, I'll turn it over to Ashley for our first question on this topic.
Thank you, Ida. Yes, our first question that we have for you, is at this moment in regards to our local budgets and public safety. As mayor, how do you currently define public safety, Mayor Alvarez?
So public safety is important for the community, right? But public safety is it's important, but we have to make sure that it's done the right way. And so one of the things that we've done here for about 3 years is there's a movement that is called the Campaign 08 Can't Wait. And so when that was sent to me to ask me if we had that implemented in the city, I went and checked back with my chief. We've had it for 3 years because one of the things when I came in as mayor, I said, I support law enforcement, but I don't support any type of abuse of anyone. That badge that you carry doesn't give you any more than what anyone else has. And so our department, I'm very proud of the work that they've done. We make sure that that is in our system and we follow through. There's got to be a lot of training. Right now, we're having conversations with the NAACP on creating a community citizen review board. We didn't have it before, but it's something that we've been in conversation, and we're actually sitting down with the NAACP to make sure that we have it. But the march that we had with over 1,000 people, that showed the great relationship that our community has with our KPD department. We are one community. 3 years ago, our chief created a brand new unit, is community policing. And so majority of the officers in that unit, they're all young officers, right? So we started doing something that we were never doing before in Kissimmee. Those young officers are in schools, talking to kids, having communication. Education is the key, right? So without education, you lose everything. So those young officers are with the kids in the schools. They spend time with them at the YMCA. They spend time in the communities. Our vehicles are even different. The painting of the vehicles are different. And so we did that to create that relationship that was missing, that I thought when I came in as a mayor that it needed to be done, and it was done. And this is why we have the relationship we have with them. We don't tolerate anyone that goes outside of what they're supposed to do in their job as police officer for community policing, which is they're there to protect the community, not to harass them and not to hurt them. And this is coming from a father, a law enforcement officer. Her husband is an officer. I have nephews that are officers. And so to me, they're human beings the same as us, but there's always rotten apples in every profession, right? So we make sure that we created enough training in our department in my tenure as mayor to make sure that we can filter out the rotten apple and we have no tolerance for it. We find the rotten apple, and the rotten apple is pulled out of the tree. And that's the way it should be. And I also believe that maybe this is something that Congress can help us with, or even in the House of Representatives, that when an officer gets fired because he's a rotten apple, that officer should not be allowed to be an officer in another department, even if it's in another state, right? So that has to follow that officer wherever he goes, that ex-officer wherever he goes. And again, I'm a big supporter of law enforcement because it's the safety that we need for our community, but I don't tolerate anyone to go beyond the normal line that they have to.
Thank you for that, Mayor. And it's it's good to hear the creation of a community review board. Of course, here in Florida, lots of the jurisdiction among our community review boards are preempted to the state. But it's good to hear the creation of that. I think for a lot of folks in community, that's very important as a source of accountability and transparency. And of course, the It Can't Wait campaign, many mayors who signed on to this effort as well. And I think for a lot of folks in this movement, there's excellent first steps, right? But we also are trying to push our leaders to think bigger and bolder around how we can redefine safety in our communities, and look towards this American crisis where law enforcement are sort of intended to be the solution to a lot of problems that they may not necessarily be best prepared for, and actually leads to acts of state violence and lives being lost, right? When we think about the criminalization of poverty, when we think about the criminalization of so many of our communities around, and of course, just the racism that exists, where if you're Black, you are more likely to experience violence at the hands of law enforcement versus being white. And I think often, for many of us who live in, I speak for myself, I live in downtown Orlando in a pretty, moderate, middle class, upper class neighborhood of Thornton Park, where I don't, have like, we're not over policed, right? But other minority communities are, and it's linked to historic, racism and so forth. Those are structural big problems, right? That happen across our country, including here in Florida and in Central Florida. But with all that being said, this is part of a national discourse, right? That's also happening here out in our streets. And so one big piece of that I'm sure you're very in tune to is, around our public budgets and how do we invest in our communities. On June 12th, the mayor of Boston declared racism a public health crisis. And to tackle that crisis, he reallocated $3 million, about 1% of the police budget, into community programs. We've seen the city of Los Angeles do that as well. And of course, in Minneapolis, they're completely restructuring their entire police structure and what it means to keep people safe by dismantling the current and rebuilding. So our question for you, that a lot of folks in the audience also wanted to make sure we touch on is, have you considered declaring racism a public health emergency and reallocating dollars from the police budget directly into Black communities that need it?
So, I do declare that racism is something that's bad. I've experienced it myself. Came to this country when I was 7 years old. I didn't know what racism was, right? And when I landed in this country, it hit me right in the face. Right? Why? Because our skin is a little bit browner, our name is different. And so the racism is there. And I will fight anything that has to do with racism and make sure that we abolish it. What we've done in the city of Kissimmee is to make sure that we have a diverse type of budgeting, right? So the law enforcement budget is one thing. We budget also funding, and we give over $200,000 for different agencies. So we have Council on Aging, right, for the elderly. So we have the budget for domestic violence, which is Help Now, Osceola. We have over $200,000 that we give to agencies that has to deal with mental health, and we also help them to receive grant. It's the only organization that's here in Osceola County. So what we do when we do budget every year is to make sure that yes, the police budget is there, but is there enough money to make sure that we can give to the programs that are doing the work that a law enforcement officer should not be doing? As you know, in 2018, I had 2 of my officers killed, right? This individual killed him, but he had mental health, right? So this guy he was a veteran. He had mental health, and the system did not react the way it needed to react. Matter of fact, a month before he committed the crime of killing my 2 officers, we actually arrested him and put him in a mental health area because he was walking around the street with the same weapon that he killed my officers a month later. So we know that police officers should not be involved in anything that has to do with mental health. And so we make sure that those programs that we work very closely with, Council on Aging for the Elderly, Help Now for domestic violence, and also the one for mental health, the funding is there. And once that funding is there that is needed, then we focus on the funding for our police department.
Thank you for that, Mayor. Thank you for having these, really important conversations with us. So many folks in our community are very, very passionate to have. And of course, as you've seen in the streets, are demanding, more transparency and answers and transformational change. And so we appreciate you having this conversation with us.
I'll say it again. Education is everything, right? So if we spend more funding in education, you will see less incarceration, right? So we need to focus on education. We need to focus on our youth. We need to make sure that they receive the education that is needed to get them to move forward in their life. And so to me, education is the #1 process. And I wish that our legislators will focus more, and our governor, in putting more funding into education. Here in Kissimmee, what we've done in reference to education is we have one organization that what they do is to qualify for a grant to go to school, to get a career, you must be homeless, right? It's called Project Open. It was first created when I was a commissioner. I pushed for the first $30,000, and it was assistant nurses. Now we do construction courses, welding courses, aviation courses. And so the families, the individuals that are graduating, I call them families because they have families. These are homeless. These are people that are in the street. And now we're changing their life. We're breaking the chain of poverty and get them into a program where they can get a job and they could get a career. And they're so happy when they see me in the street. They said, Mayor, I'm not on food stamps anymore. I'm not on welfare anymore. I don't live in the homeless camp anymore. And so that to me keeps me to push forward. Right now, that program receives every year over $140,000. And what we did is we partner with local companies here in Kissimmee to make sure that they help us, because what we wanted is as they graduated, they got a job. So education is one of the #1 priorities to make sure that incarceration number continues to go down.
Thank you for that.
I talk too much.
No, you do not. We really have enjoyed this conversation with you and appreciate the time you provided for the Contigo Fund. I think we can all agree that program you spoke to is amazing, and we'd love to see that budget even bigger. And that truly is keeping people safe and whole.
It will get bigger when I go into the county and try to get some county dollars into the program.
All right. Well, we'll hope to do it.
That is awesome.
We have just one more question and then closing remarks. And this is also from the audience. What are key commitment and action steps that you've made or can make today to be responsive to this movement for LGBTQ Black lives?
I've always been there for the LGBTQ. I've taken a lot of hits because I supported, back when I was a commissioner, they came and asked me, they wanted to put, it's called the C2C flag, right? And so they wanted to put it in City Hall. And boy, it was a fight. It was a battle, but I'm able to get consensus and got the 3 votes that we needed. I was only a commissioner back then. And we proudly put that flag, that big old flag covering the front of City Hall. Got a lot of hate mail, received a lot of enemies from it. Also was very proud to receive the endorsement when I ran for mayor from the LGBTQ because of the work we've done. After the shooting at Pulse, me and Commissioner Cheryl Grieve, and you guys probably know Cheryl Grieve from Osceola County. We've both been realtors and known each other for over 20 years. She served in the city, went to the county. And so after the Pulse shooting, me and her, we sat down and we said, you know, Cheryl, what can we do to change here in Osceola County? And so we created the Domestic Partnership Registry, right? So we did it in the city, we did it in the county. We tried to get St. Cloud to join in, it didn't happen. But at least inside the county and the city of Kissimmee, we created it because this gave an opportunity for that domestic partner that say they need to visit their partner at the hospital, they couldn't do that. Or they needed to get information, medical information, they couldn't do that. And so we created it, we enacted it into law in the city and in the county. And so I'm very proud of that work that me and Cheryl Grieve have done. We do a parade for the LGBTQ here in our Lakefront Park every year. Unfortunately, this year, because of the COVID, we're not going to be able to do it. But I'm always there for my entire community, not only for the LGBTQ. I'm in here for my entire community. That's who I work for. That's who I represent.
Thank you, Mayor. And of course, the Contigo Fund formed following the Pulse tragedy, and so many of the lives impacted were from Kissimmee, from Osceola County. And so it's so critical to, as we heal and rebuild our communities, it's very critical that that we engage, of course, Kissimmee and Osceola, and we appreciate your commitment to that. I'm going to pass it to Ashley to close this off.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your time today. Before we close off, we want to turn it over to you for we welcome any closing thoughts you may have. You
know, again, here to serve my community. It doesn't matter to me where you come from and who you are. To me, everyone is human. When we bleed, we all bleed red. So to me, everyone is equal. I don't see a difference between anyone else. I'm very proud of the work and the closeness work that I've done with the LGBTQ and the NAACP. One of the things that I didn't say when I first got elected as commissioner, you know, I had a group from the African American community came to visit me at City Hall. I was a brand new commissioner, right? So they didn't know what I was going to expect. And they brought a concern that they had. So in the city of Kissimmee, we've never had a Martin Luther King parade. And I was stunned to hear that that had never happened. So that was back in 2012. I'm very proud that year we fought to get that Martin Luther King parade in Kissimmee. And it's been on every single year. I was proud that they honored me to be the Grand Marshal on the first parade that they had. And, you know, we've had people in the area, in the community that were telling me, well, if you want to do the parade, don't do it on Broadway. Broadway is our downtown. Do it on Martin Luther King Road. And I said, no, we're going to do the parade on Broadway. We're going to do it in downtown Kissimmee like any other parade that we do. And I fought it. It was a 3-2 vote. Again, is getting consensus, is knowing how to get consensus when you sit behind that dais, because that is so important. And so we got it done. And I'm very proud to see every single year that that parade continues to move forward. So I'm here serving the community. I always tell everyone, this is not a profession for me. I make a living and support my family by selling houses for a living, because if not, my wife will not let me serve office anymore. But I enjoy serving my community. And so the way I look at it is, this country, by allowing me to be here, gave me the freedom that with hard work and dedication, I was able to do anything and accomplish anything I wanted. So it was time for me to give back. And that was the reason why I ran for office. And that's the reason why I'm in office right now. And thank you so much for this opportunity to be with you guys. And anytime that you need me for anything, I'll be here. And at least if it's just my voice and my ugly mug, I'll be more than happy to put it in front of a camera.
Well, thank you, Mayor, very much. We appreciate that. And, you know, it comes down to that, right? It's all about, we're all humans and we all deserve human rights. So thank you very much for that. Continue to do the work that you're doing. We need more people like you.
Thank you so much. You guys are great. Tell your sister I love her very much, and she's doing a tremendous job in Tallahassee.
Thank you, Mayor. I will relay that message. It's a high bar for you, so we will relay
it. I never regretted that endorsement that I gave her. I love her there. She's taking the fight, and you know, we need more people like her that's not afraid to speak out, even though we're the minority in Tallahassee. But you know what? We have the loudest voice, and we have to continue to push forward to make sure that our constituents are taken care of. And that's what they're not doing. They're pushing our constituents aside. You know, it's a shame what we've gone through with COVID-19 and we've gone through with the unemployment issue that we have. And you don't see not one of the Republicans coming out on TV. And I don't want to put parties in front here, but not one of the Republicans have come on TV and say, admit that we have an issue and we have a problem. But you know what? We continue to fight it and we continue to bring that voice forward. And hopefully, maybe they will listen to the cry of the people.
We appreciate that, Mayor. Here at the Contigo Fund, our goal is to center directly impacted voices because nobody knows what their freedom and liberation looks more like the people who are impacted. And so we'll continue to do that as well in our role. And absolutely, my sister is, you know, she's from community. And so she's going to fight for community. So we appreciate that. And thank you for your time today.
And hopefully soon we'll see her at the governor's office.
That's right.
Not me, because I have way too much gray hair. I can't handle that.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much. You guys have a great day, and please be safe out there. Okay.
Thank you as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, Ashley. Well, that was a great conversation with, of course, you know, mayors of two major cities here in Central Florida where our communities are directly impacted.
Yes, absolutely, Ida. And thank you very much. And, you know, it was a great, you know, session with Mayor Alvarez, and we appreciate his work and advocacy and representing us all in the city of Kissimmee.
Yes. And I think for folks watching, the call is pretty clear around, you know, what our job is, continue pushing for big, bold, transformational change, to, you know, pick up the call to action, you know, to attend these meetings, to bring our community there and also bring these leaders to our community, right? And so we'll continue to do that as we tried to do today in this forum.